On the headlines. President Obama has spoken by phone to his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, about the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. In Kiev, the interim president says the country's armed forces are on full combat alert following the authorization of military action by the Russian parliament. Let's stay with the story for analysis on the Western response to the latest developments. I've been speaking to John Herbst, who is a former American ambassador to Ukraine, and I asked him if President Obama's diplomacy is failing and if it's, in fact, President Putin who's controlling events.
Well, there's no question Mr. Putin has decided to violate international law and put troops in Crimea in places where they're not permitted to be by international law, in contradiction to its commitments under its basic agreement with Ukraine, the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, and other international statutes.
But the problem is that no one seems to be able to do anything about it. What can be done?
Well, I think President Obama has made a start. The announcement that we are freezing our plans to participate in the G8 summit is a significant step. I think that we should make an explicit warning that if Russia continues its aggression in Ukraine, it will be kicked out of the G8, and the G8 will revert to being the G7. I think we also did something very useful. The EU did something very useful in Ukraine, where it levied financial sanctions against those in leadership who were oppressing their own people. I think you have legislation in the United States, Magnitsky legislation, which could be used to levy financial sanctions against those in Russia who are responsible for this aggression, including President Putin. And if the EU to do something similar. Mr. Putin has taken a lot of money out of Russia. I think he would not want to see that money at risk.
At the moment, in terms of the statements that have come out from the West, there doesn't seem to be any recognition of Russia's interests as far as Ukraine is concerned, because the Black Sea, there, Balaclava, is very important to Russia, as you know. The trade also would be important, and Ukraine itself, as a sphere of influence for Russia, is important. Would it not be more helpful if the West were to recognize that and say, let's make that a starting point and negotiate these issues with you to Moscow?
Well, I think that the United States, and for that matter the countries in Western Europe, understand and have made clear their understanding that there are important historical, ethnic, religious, linguistic ties between Russia and Ukraine. That's not an issue. What's an issue is, do the Ukrainian people have the right to choose their own form of government? And it looks like Mr. Putin says the answer to that is no. We know that he has instituted authoritarianism in Russia. He seems to want to make sure that authoritarianism also reigns in Ukraine. We should be sensitive to Russian concerns, without a doubt, but not at the expense of letting Mr. Putin repress the Ukrainian people, which is what is happening right now.
Could you explain to us what the situation is with Crimea having its own prime minister? What is the legislative relationship between the Crimean prime minister and the Ukrainian government in Kiev? Because this statement from the Crimean prime minister that he would like Russia to restore order, just putting words into his mouth, he effectively said that.
He did effectively say that. Under Ukraine's constitution, Crimea has much more autonomy than any other region in the country. And that reflects the unique historical circumstances of Crimea, as well as the fact that there is an ethnic Russian majority on the peninsula. But that does not give the new prime minister the right to invite Russian troops in. And let's keep in mind, this new prime minister is not a representative of the majority in Crimea. His party received only 4% of the vote in the election last fall in Crimea. So his is very much a minority voice, which cannot claim to speak for all Crimeans, or even a majority of Crimeans. He's essentially a stooge of the Kremlin.
In Pakistan, a Taliban spokesman